Okay, let's run.
Your mission, should you choose to accept it.
It's a quest. It's a quest for fun.
Well, The Rock says, why don't we just cut right to the chase?
Okay, now he wants to get together. Well, he wants to talk.
I want you to do me a favor. I want you to tell all your friends about me.
It's showtime, folks!
What are you?
I'm...
Greetings and salutations. Welcome to And I Quote, the weekly show where we introduce you to creators of all shapes and sizes that join us from many and all corners of the universe. We find out more about them by taking your questions. I am your host, Ryan of And I Quote channel, and our guest on this episode is indie comic creator Ray Jamison. Ray, welcome to the show. How are you today, good sir?
I'm doing well, having a good time.
All right. Well, we're very happy to have you here. Now, if you have any questions for Ray Jamison as we go throughout the course of this program, let us know in those comments. Let us know in the chat. And if you're watching this live or what is known as a replay, we thank you so much for being with us. And do not forget to like and share this with everyone you know, because Lord knows you got a giant circle of friends out there. We know you do, audience. We love you anyway. With that being said, Ray Jamison, when were you introduced specifically to the world of comics?
World of comic books before I can remember. So I have a brother 5 years older than myself, and I was born in the early mid 80s, and my brother being born in the late 70s, he had like an early exposure, but he had the, not so much myself, but him, I kind of was on the tail end of it. Growing up and watching those cartoons, Incredible Hulk, Spider-Man, Amazing Friend, all those really cool ones that are iconic for their era. I would go to a video rental store and I would rent whatever I could, and that would give me more exposure to things like the original 60s Spider-Man. I remember renting the very first issue, which is telling the whole origin with the original art in some of the frames, and that left an impact on me. I always liked the idea of repercussions to your actions, or as stated in that comic, great power and great responsibility. Eventually, instead of just watching what my brother liked, he liked the Hulk a lot. And I getting into the 90s and starting to go to the mall and grabbing things off of the spinner rack. One of my earliest ones I grabbed just because it looked so cool was the very first appearance of Professor Hulk, where Banner and both Hulks all merge and get their stuff together. That was, no big deal. Let's see what this one's like. It can't be, it's probably okay, but it was great. It was Peter David was, it was Peter David. There's no other way of putting it. But I liked comics a lot. I liked the concept of the hero. I liked the concept of having powers. And going back to the Spider-Man dynamic, just because you're a good guy doesn't mean you're infallible, and you can make mistakes. And more importantly, you could do the wrong thing with really good intentions and have a lot of bad things play out accordingly. Now, one thing, although my brother had that grace of going through those cool cartoons in the 80s, I did have the 90s, but I had this weird contrast where I grew up and the school I went to, a lot of kids would never admit they liked comics. It was almost like if I liked comics, I was not mature. And everybody in elementary school is always trying to demonstrate how they're more mature and stuff, right? Over time, comics won. Started with Kevin Conroy and Mark Hamill in 92. Obviously, what's now resurrected as X-Men 97. And then getting the silver screen in 98 with Blade, then 2000 with X-Men, and then the big springboard in 2002 when I was just finishing high school with Sam Raimi's Spider-Man. And here we are now where nerd is now a mainstream way of saying cool in a way. Although it still has definitive things, superheroes and comics being part of that genre. But it's been like I've had a relationship with comic books in one form or another since before I can even remember.
My goodness, that was a long list, but we appreciate it nonetheless. And you mentioned some names and some characters that I'm familiar with, and maybe the person who's watching or listening to this may be familiar with. But if you're not familiar with some of these names, feel free to visit your local comic shop, support your local comic shops when you can, and check out some of these comics featuring these beloved characters, I should say, because they've been around for many decades, which is insanity times 1,000. They've been around for that long. But then again, hey, lots of things have happened before I was born, and lots of things have happened before the other person maybe watching or listening to this was born. Good heavens almighty. But good names there. Good names. No problem at all. Wow, you just went through the whole... I feel like you just went through a whole dissertation real quick of where we were back in the 80s. I was born at the tail end of that. Sorry. But
all good.
It's okay. I was born at the tail end of it. And then you go into the 90s, and you go into... Geez, you just gave a nice list of all these great accomplishments that have happened in the worlds of comics and then in cinema and television and artistry and all this other jazz.
Well, 1989, you talk about it like it's a bad thing. Well, that's when Tim Burton's Batman came out. You're apologizing if you that's a great time to be born, to be honest. Like, you had all that cool stuff that came with it, and you grew up with that. Like, that's really cool.
No. I'm not saying it's a bad thing at all. I mean, no. On the contrary, I grew up watching Tim Burton's Batman on VHS religiously. I watched it billions of times. No, seriously, I'm not even kidding you.
That's awesome.
If there's a VHS tape that we had in our family home, now I grew up with two brothers, by the way, just to be clear, and we watched a lot of movies. Sometimes we watched them together. Sometimes we watched them, by ourselves or wherever it was at the time. And I would always pop in the Batman VHS tape because I knew I was in for a heck of a ride. And every time Batman shows up and he crashes through the glass at the museum to save Vicky Vale's life, that's awesomeness. That's a fist pump moment times 1,000. Because when that moment happened, I'm thinking to myself, if this is what comic book movies are and this is how superheroes roll, give me all of it. Because
cool, I'm in.
Yeah, like seriously. And then you know what happens next, right? He saves her. They jump out the door. He says,
I want those toys.
Yeah. Well, Joker says, "Where does he get those wonderful toys?" And then Batman looks at Vicky and says, "Get in the car." Which one? Boom! Danny Elfman's score kicks in, and you see the Batmobile for the first time. And the Batmobile is that to me is the best.
It is iconic, that's for sure.
It's a great car. I still want that car, fellas. Give me that car.
I had the toy. So in '89 that summer, so the following December, Christmas is hot with the toy lines. Mm-hmm. We had Joker, Batman, where his belt was the grappling hook that wound up.
Yeah.
And we got the Batmobile. The Batmobile was actually really cool because the headlights were missiles. If you pulled the shift stick, it fired out 2 missiles, and it had shields, but it was just like a case that went over top of the Batmobile.
I love it. It's great. Yeah, I had 1 or 2, maybe 3 of the Batman '89 featured toys for the time. Granted, I didn't see the movie until some years later because I was only 2 when the movie came out. I know I'm dating myself.
All good, man. You're younger than me, if that helps.
It's okay. It's fine. Yeah. Age is just a number anyway, folks. Don't worry about it. But outside of all that stuff, and you mentioned a few, but I'm just curious because it kind of segues into what our next question is. What would you say are some of your favorite comic book-based movies or TV series, past or present, other than the ones that you've already mentioned?
Okay, so I have different categorized favorites. So for nostalgia reasons, I mean, not a perfect movie by any measure, but Sam Raimi's first Spider-Man movie, that came out May 3rd, 2002. I was just finishing high school, and I had a lot of positive things going on with my life. So whenever I watch the old trailer or something, May 3rd, 2002, there's just a feeling of dopamine. I don't know how else to put it. I mean, I enjoy a lot of that movie too. I really like how Sam Raimi, again, power versus responsibility. Mm-hmm. I mean, you look at the older comics, almost to a fault, there's so many words in it. So in that case, when you look at Spider-Man's origin, I lost Uncle Ben. He could talk all about his feelings and his thoughts and everything. Mm-hmm. Sam Raimi did that whole thing without words. He showed it all and put Parker to tears. And if you know absolutely nothing about Spider-Man, the nails hit on the head at the very end when he just rejects the girl he's been vying for at the whole time. Yeah. And just, and then the narration, of course, after. I don't want her to get hurt. And if I'm going to do these good things, I either be selfish and have her hurt and be unhappy, or thanks but no thanks. This sucks, but I've got things to do. And a real good coming of age story. I like Days of Future Past, even though it's not comic accurate. I really appreciate the dynamic of people trying. In no place in human history are you able to go back in time and fix something. So to just experiment over, if only I was nice to Mystique, or if only I treat her a little bit differently, would that be enough of a butterfly effect to change something for the better? Obviously, that's a double-edged sword. I mean, I personally, if I had the opportunity to go back in time and fix something in my life, I would be terrified of making it worse. I accept, like, I had good times in my life. Everybody has, this, I wish this was better, but in reality, part of that also defines me right now. So I accept all of those things. Another good movie, I'll go to DC. Although it's kind of divisive, but I really liked Robert Pattinson as Batman. The reason I don't think he was a good Bruce Wayne. I want to clarify. I thought he was an excellent, inexperienced year one Batman.
Yeah.
I mean, if he was like a well-experienced Batman and you took that persona, it doesn't work. But even just little things like when he has to escape from the police and he's on top of the building and he looks over the cliff, and then you could see I've never done this before. I'm prepared for it, but this is a first. And I really like all of those growing pains he goes through. It was like an origin story without being fully an origin story. What other good ones are there? I like the original Blade. I think the other two didn't hold up. The second one wasn't bad. It was very brave, bold opinion of having vampires for vampires, essentially. That first one, though, for its time, that was a one of a kind. That was revolutionary, and I will always commend it for that. There's obviously some visuals that didn't age that well, but if you go in understanding that, you can definitely appreciate that movie for a one-off. Yeah, lots of different comic book movies. I could go on, as you can tell, like I do.
It's okay.
I appreciate those dynamics. All the effort, all of the background, the lore, the behind the scenes, everything to make a cool 1.5 to 2 hour movie. There's also going back, like I've kind of rambled a bit, but if I had to pick top 2, I would pick Sam Raimi's Spider-Man 2. I think that one is the big highlight of power versus responsibility, character development. When I originally watched those, I had a hard time accepting organic webs, but now it's not a big deal, of course. But even having things like web block and losing his powers and not understanding that he was just in his own head. And if you actually want to balance things, go and do it. Don't just... I've heard this metaphor before, or the saying rather, when you do something, you have to think about winning, not think about not losing. And that whole movie, he's thinking about not losing. Don't lose the girl. Don't do this. Don't do that. And he's just thinking about all these negative aspects that happen. And then when, although it's a trope, Mary Jane gets in danger, that dials in, what do I want? And for that story, it works. It definitely works. Then the last movie I'll list off, Endgame is great, but instead I'll talk about Winter Soldier. I really like the idea of an individual like Steve Rogers, who I guess the best way to put it is there's so much loss. The real way to define him in those earlier movies is depression. And the reason I said Endgame earlier, that was the first time he had a catharsis of expressing that frustration. Like even when you see Infinity War, he just loses that much more. And then at the start of Endgame, he's that frustrated. And then by the end of it, he actually gets to express Like he didn't get to go through the Second World War. He just woke up and it was all over. He lost the girl, lost the everything. And at the end of Endgame, he actually had it's like that was his World War II. Like, I can finally go back, or I can actually just get this out of my system. And again, with time travel, you don't get to do that, right? Like, but to have that thought and really root for him, and then little tiny icings on the cake, which including like wielding Mjolnir and the very end where he just doesn't come back and actually gets to right that wrong. It's a very cool story.
Well, we can tell you're a fan of Steve Rogers. Hey, listen, not that there's anything wrong with that. What else is really cool is that you are watching or listening to this great episode of And I Quote with our guest of honor and our comic book movie historian, Ray Jamison, of all people, on this episode. Don't forget to like and share this with everyone you know. If you have any questions for Ray Jamison, let us know in those comments. Let us know in the chat. And don't forget to like and share this with everyone you know. Goodness gracious. Steve Rogers. Speaking of Steve Rogers, and for those of you wondering, we do this thing on this channel known as Movie Watch Along, where if a movie turns a certain age, we do a watch along. You watch us watch the movie. You can watch the movie along with us from the comfort of your own home, whether it's through physical media or streaming service. We just did one some weeks ago, or about a month. I think it was like a month or so ago, for Captain America: Winter Soldier. It turned 10, so
it's wild. Doesn't feel that long ago, that's for sure.
Which is cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs. Yeah, we did one for that. We also did one for X-Men: Days of Future Past, because that was also released within the same year of 2014. What a year that was for comic movies.
Yeah, it was something.
Goodness gracious. Some of the best ever, if not ever. But anyway, that's just my 2 cents. So, really good list. And yeah, Blade is still solid. The blood rape scene and the character introduction of Blade is one of the best introductions to a character I've ever seen in my flipping life. I mean, walks in there with the trench coat, like, owns the place. Everybody's like, who's this guy? What is going on here? It's the Daywalker, but what are we doing here?
I was 14 when that came out. And
it's a great movie.
Later, when it came out for rental on VHS, I watched it and like, this is a superhero movie. I want to watch it. So I sat down with my brother, and we have no idea. We haven't seen any reviews. We don't know the rate that it's rated R or anything like that. I sit down with my brother, both of my parents, and one of their friends, and we all uncomfortably watch through the whole thing. Good. Nobody wants to say the obvious, like the mild, unforeseen gestures some are giving to each other in the rave at the start. Then the blood starts falling, people getting chopped to bits, and that was a good first experience for me.
Certain things happen.
Things just happen
during the course of that film. Certain events take place and certain things happen, and there's a lot of curse words, there's a lot of violence, a lot of blood, a lot of gore. But hey, it's Blade, it's vampires, it's a Daywalker hunting other vampires. What are you going to do? It
was a brave attempt at a movie which ended up being successful.
And it's still a great movie. I mean, even to this day, I like that flipping movie. We did a movie watch along for that last year. It was a lot of fun because it turned 25. At the time, it did. This year would be its 20. I want to say it's 26th anniversary. Yeah, 26th anniversary.
26. Yeah.
Yeah, but we did it last year. So feel free to go back and check out the Movie Nerds playlist. For those of you wondering what movie watch along is, you can find episodes there. You can go back and watch those movies, or discover them for yourself for the very first time. They're a lot of fun. With that being said, what would you say are some of your favorite comic book writers or artists in your opinion?
Okay, so this is a segue. I won't jump on the segue, but I'll mention them now so we can talk about them later. The first comic that I ever collected issue to issue, grabbed back issues and stuff, was the second volume of Ghost Rider. Started in 1990, where Dan Ketch took over instead of Johnny Blaze. Eventually, Johnny Blaze starts hunting down Dan Ketch because he's free of this curse, thinking this is another heaven. Heaven forbid I use this word, hellspawn, different franchise, but I'll go there anyways. The artist in that, Harvey Salteras, for that first year. I like his use of balance of motion with anatomy. And the reason I like it is, for him, he very much understood the fine balance of being dynamic, but also holding back, almost like a less is more. The best way I could illustrate too dynamic is, especially in the 90s, the trope was everybody looks like the marionettes. They're always in some type of floppy kind of look. Harv, he did like the opposite. I wouldn't say to a fault. It's almost like he knew exactly when something should be dynamic and when something was obviously excessively dynamic. Scale it back. If someone's talking, it's okay if they're looking normal, but the way he drew the detail in the faces and stuff, you actually had something to look at. It wasn't just how the bodies were posed and how much thatching was on or shading was on it, which was a gift and a curse in the early to mid 90s, especially with Image making art, the icing being more important than the cake, if you will. But with that said, the segue, which we'll talk about later, he actually made one of the covers of one of my variant covers for my book, which is really cool.
Okay, definitely look forward to hearing more about that a little bit later on in this episode of And I Quote. Good Lord. Good names. Thank you for bringing that up. And when did you decide to become an indie comic book creator?
Indie comic book creator? Well, this comic, this is my first one, the Madcaps, and it is based off of the first homebrew D&D campaign that I ever ran. The only thing that's different is I subbed out the players' characters of the time and put in my own. But the lore, everything in the background, it's like 10 years worth of lore and story before I actually wrote this comic.
Well, oh my goodness. Wow, that's an awfully long time. But hey, nothing wrong with that. Always got ideas roaming around in our heads. Sometimes we put them down on paper. Sometimes we keep them stored for a rainy day. You never know.
Yes.
Yeah. What would you say are some of the biggest rewards about being an indie comic book creator?
It's a very small world, very supportive community. Just like anything else, you might hear like little things of one or two people not liking each other, but that's not the highlight. I do comic reviews. I just hit my 20th one, and I review only indie comics. And I've got one. The last one I did rather for Chad Perkins. He has one coming out called Set the Hook. One of the cool things is I get to read these cool stories and just talk about them. And as we were just talking here, we were talking about Blade. I could talk Blade. It's great. It's awesome. This is what I like about it. These are my thoughts. Enjoy. I get to do that with an indie comic, wrap it all up within. I try to keep it under 2 minutes. My first couple were a little longer than that, but I think that would be one of the biggest ones. The other one is, as I already mentioned, some of the talent that I've been able to attach to this project. It's staggering to me that I could find these big names that have been around since I was a kid, talk to them, get a no or a yes. And the ones that give me yes, they're nonchalant about it, like it's no big deal. But in my mind, these guys were big deals for like ever. Another name I'll use is Dan Kemp. He's colored over 100 issues of Spawn, basically 50 to 150. And he was the second guy to ever color that comic series. And he's colored all the interiors and 2 of the covers for this first issue. And just, are you free? Well, we negotiate price, and you talk to the guy. He's just like, it's like that Foo Fighters song, My Hero. It says right in there, he's ordinary, and that all these fantastical people with these talent, you talk to them. Yeah, they're just regular folk. They obviously have special talents, but they're not like deities or anything like that. They're people you can approach and have a conversation with.
Well, teamwork certainly makes the dream work. That is for sure. On the opposite side of the coin, though, what are some of the biggest challenges about being an indie comic creator?
Well, there's, of course, the obvious one of you're not as recognized in advertising and stuff. What else could I really say? I haven't had any other real negative dynamics. I mean, it would be cool to produce something monthly. But with that said, like this first issue, it took me 2 years to do. And the reason it took so long, I already had the story done, is I wanted to make sure I had the right talent to make sure it was worthy of the industry. This is the first comic I've written officially. So it's not up to me of my quality of writing. It's up to the people, the reception I get back when people actually get to dig through this. So I heard Jerry Seinfeld once when he ran his show, he claimed that he didn't find himself funny at all, and he tried to counter that by surrounding himself by a lot of funny talent. And since I don't know my quality, I want to make sure at least everything else is going sound. We'll find out about myself once we get out the gate, if you will.
Wow, it's funny you bring up Jerry. That you bring up the comedian, legendary talent known as Jerry Seinfeld, because he's good. I mean, he's friends with a lot of different people. Don't get me wrong.
Mhm.
But one person in particular that he went to when, if I'm funny or not, Larry Miller is a good friend of his, and he's a very good actor as well. He shows up in the episode in season 6 known as the Doorman. So if you haven't seen that,
I know
episode,
the one you're talking about, yeah.
Yeah, feel free to, the one who's like, oh, the sports page. You think you're better than me, don't you?
You think you're better than me?
Yeah, exactly. It's that whole weird, what do you call it? Like attempt at a dynamic between Jerry and the doorman of Elaine's boss's building, Mr. Pitt's building. Thinking, oh my gosh, man, this guy's really, he's just a
And when
weird
they
dude.
start imagining the doormen in their own little society later cackling in an underground base.
Yeah,
and they
like,
think they're better than us.
yeah, it's a funny episode. There's some clips about it on social media. If anyone who's watching or listening to this wants to go and just type in Seinfeld the Doorman episode or Seinfeld season 6 the Doorman, whatever it is. Feel free to look it up, Google it. It's somewhere out there in the interwebs. It's very funny, and Larry Miller and Jerry Seinfeld are very, very, very close friends. So feel free to look that up. You brought this up earlier, so let's go ahead and address it. So the Madcaps. This is first of all, this is a really good looking cover. For those of you who are watching or listening, we're looking at the cover for one of the covers for the Madcaps. Who are these characters that we're seeing here, and what exactly is the storyline?
Sure. So first, since we're starting with the visuals, this is done by Jimbo Salgado. Just look him up on Google. Just type in Jimbo Salgado art. Find him on social media, Facebook. He's very, very active. He draws a lot of cool things, and he does it very well. This is also colored by Dan Kemp. This is one of the 2 covers that he colored. This is a medieval fantasy setting. It's a 3-issue miniseries. It takes place over one night, the whole thing. Each issue is one act. And these 4 characters are all childhood friends meeting up back at their old stomping grounds in a place called Ivywood. They're in the wrong place at the wrong time, and there's an outbreak with the undead. That is the elevator pitch.
Wow, man. Boy, that's talk about John McClane. You are about to have a very bad day. Yeah, tell me about it. Sorry, I had to throw it in there because wrong place, wrong time. I mean, that's pretty much happened in every single Die Hard movie that's ever come out.
Yeah, that's true. That's pretty much almost every Bruce Willis movie, really.
Yeah,
not quite, but pretty much.
I mean, yeah.
I mean, he does it well, so I'm not complaining.
No, he does it very well. I mean, just look at the first Die Hard. People still look at it as one of the greatest movies of all time and one of the best action movies of all time.
Let's clarify something. One of the best Christmas movies of all time.
Yes. I know a lot of people have made that argument over the years. Some people say it's not. A lot of people say it is. In fact, a Christmas movie. I get it. I enjoy it for what it is. That's all I'm going to say. Die Hard is a great movie overall. It's a great time to watch it any time of year, whether it's during the holiday season or the non-holiday season. You can still watch it and enjoy it to great effect, at least in my opinion.
Yeah, it's a good point. If you were able to erase all of the Christmas decorations, you wouldn't feel like you're missing anything. It's a good point.
Yeah, I just feel like you can watch it any time of year specifically. I mean, you can find it anywhere. It's on streaming services, and I know some people download it. Was it from digital HD copies of the movie or Blu-ray, DVD, whatever it is, whatever you collect. I got it on. I mean, heck, I got it both on Blu-ray and DVD and digital HD, son. So I know what's going on. But fantastic! Congratulations on the Madcaps and the story and the creators and the people you've had put together the covers and the images and the coloring, the inking, all that stuff. So congratulations. Wish you nothing but success moving forward. Once again, we are here with the incredible comic book historian. He's got a PhD in this whole gosh darn course. He did it better than me.
Specific era, yes.
Yeah, of a specific era. I mean, if you want to call it that, yeah, sure. Ray Jamison is here with us. Don't forget to like and share this with everyone you know. If you have any questions for him, by all means, let us know in those comments. Let us know in the chat. And if you're joining us live or on the replay, we thank you specifically so much for being here. Now, have there been any special memories for you, Ray, from being at conventions, whether you are there as a vendor or there as an attendee?
So in going to conventions, now I live in Winnipeg. In Canada, the conventions are further apart. There's a lot of real estate in between. I have been to a few. I've been to Winnipeg's quite a few times. Winnipeg's Comic-Con. It's in October. I like the idea. Now, just to highlight, when I was in elementary school, comic books were not cool. So for me, it's always nice to see the exact opposite of that. So you just walk in, you'll see people dressed up in the equivalent of Halloween costumes, just very professionally done. And it's today's Tuesday. It's not a big deal. And seeing people talk about the culture, the lore, or stories, meeting celebrities, it's always cool. I think of all the celebrities I've met, I got to meet Lou Ferrigno. My brother being a fan of the Hulk, that was a cool one. I saw Ray Park. Billy Boyd, who played Pippin Took. I was really happy to meet him. Going back to the whole dynamic of these people being celebrities, you make them up to be icons in your mind. And then when you see them and you actually see them in 3D and moving, it dials it in that these are humans that were able to be successful, which is very, very inspirational. Not that I aspire to be a celebrity, but just that I aspire to be successful, whatever that success is that I want. It's interesting to see these people attain that thing. And when I see them in real life, yeah, they're humans. They're the Foo Fighters song, "He's Ordinary," as they say in it.
No, I see what you mean. Good names you brought up there. I've had the pleasure of meeting Ray Park, aka Darth Maul, in the physical embodiment of him anyway. Fantastic guy, and he's a giant nerd. He'll talk your ear off about anything. The guy knows his stuff. So I'll give Ray Park credit for that. And all these years later, what is it, 25 years now since Phantom Menace came out?
99, so yeah, 25.
The guy can still move like he's 20. You know, he's got the acrobatic moves. He can still do he does lightsaber demonstrations when he's at conventions. So yeah, still doing it 25 plus years later. The man's very let's just say he's in very great physical shape. I'll just put it that way.
Mm-hmm.
Well done. I heard Ray Park's going to be at a convention not too far from me in the next few months. Maybe I'll get a chance to see him again. We can talk more about Star Wars or G.I. Joe or X-Men or whatever else he was in. So we'll have to wait and see. But that's cool that you were able to meet some of these big names in Hollywood, some of the biggest names in fandom. Yeah. So fantastic stuff. I want to let you know, and the person who may be watching or listening to this, know that this episode of A&I Quote is indeed powered by our good friends at Poddex. Now, check this. Poddex are what is known as unique interview questions, as well as episode starting prompts in the palm of your hand. So whether you are a new podcaster or existing broadcaster looking to grow your audience or get more engagement, you're going to want to check out our friends at poddex.com and use that promo code Ryan10. That's RYAN10, Ryan10 for 10% off your first order. So definitely visit our friends over there at poddex.com. Download the app on your phone or mobile device. You'll be glad that you did. Lots of great things there. So Poddex wants to know, what is one surefire way to grab your attention, Ray?
To grab my attention?
Yeah, could be anything.
Anything.
For example,
if I have time, story. I love story, and if it's portrayed well, I'm very intrigued. So it could be something like The Path of Samwise. Samwise Gamgee. I know that's very overplayed a lot now. I shouldn't say overplayed. It's more commonly understood of the person's value and intention. But I never read Lord of the Rings before I saw the movies.
Oh.
I was that very first one that came out. That was just months after 9/11. That was my last year of high school. Mm-hmm. I watched that one, and at first I was frustrated. I watched a movie without an ending. And I couldn't fathom that. Nowadays, trilogies are a dime a dozen. But when that hit, I watched it with my best man, and he read all the books, and he was there. Like, he loved it. We're driving away. I'm like, well, I paid for a movie. I didn't get the ending. I feel like it's got, like, at least a little bit more. But anyways, going back to the Samwise dynamic, you watch that he has a duty. One of the cool things about honor and duty is it's very hard to put your own wants aside. And he took, especially getting into the middle act of Return of the King, he took a lot of emotional bombardment. He had somebody conspiring against him. And despite all of that, and watching and helplessly just watching those personalities play out in that train wreck, He was very upset when his friend decided to dismiss him. But at the end, as he's climbing down, he sees the disposed food, and he realizes my friend still needs me, even though he doesn't want me to be there. That's a very powerful thing to see. Something like that, if you can summarize dynamics like that, that very much gets my attention.
All right. Good story. That's really good stuff. And me personally, my favorite of the trilogy is Fellowship. That's my favorite.
Yes, I agree. It's more intimate. I
Yeah.
like it because the biggest threats in that aren't necessarily the biggest threats ever. So there's no cataclysmic army versus army defending a castle. The cave troll, that was a big deal. Or you watch all these guys just helplessly watch as Gandalf and the Balrog duke it out. That's awesome. That's just big statements. Great movie.
One does not simply walk into Mordor. Anyway, Sean Bean is a gift, and he's a great actor. First time I ever saw him was in the Bond film Goldeneye.
Yes.
He's a great actor. Brilliant. I mean, he goes from playing that to playing, Boromir in Lord of the Rings, and I'm just thinking, man, this guy's got some really good range, dude.
Yes. Yeah, he's excellent.
He's a solid actor. But yeah, Fellowship is my favorite personally. Someone actually just posted an image on their social media of them watching what is known as the Lord of the Rings, Fellowship of the Ring on their laptop, and their cat was watching the entire movie along with them for 3 hours. And I'm thinking, or 4 hours, depending on which cut of the movie you're watching, because there's 2 different cuts of all 3 films.
Theatrical and then
in the extended cuts.
Yes.
Yeah. And I'm thinking, boy, that cat has a really good attention span. Good Lord, man. It's a long movie, but hey, if they're checked into it, like they are
it's committed.
Like, they're in. Yes, it's called commitment. Yes. Very committed. Thank you for bringing that up in terms of Lord of the Rings and the storyline there. Great answer to that question. Podex is curious, though. Would you rather have what is known as a cool boss and learn absolutely nothing, or a strict boss who you learn from?
My first job outside of high school, I had there's a couple different ways to answer this. So first, have you ever heard of personality type tests like Myers-Briggs?
Oh yeah, I took it.
Okay, so I don't like using them too much because it's very easy to start using them like a horoscope. With that said, I do read on them a lot. One guy right out of high school, my very first job, I worked night shift for about 3 years. Oh, wow. The guy to train me, he was a year older than my father. So he would have been in his mid-late 50s, and I wasn't even 19 yet. And he was quote-unquote strict, but it wasn't about strict. I already talked about honor-bound with Samwise. If this was the right way of doing it, we're going to do it whether I like to do it or not, was his attitude. I would rather have the strict, quote-unquote, as they say, hard-ass. I would rather have that fellow that is going to teach me how to do my job, so when that person's gone, I can hold my own. The cool boss, I'll have great memories, but when they're gone, I'm back to square one. If I haven't learned anything, I can't depend on that person for the rest of my life.
Ah, I see your point. All right, fair enough. Do you put up a boundary in any area of your life to keep people out?
I'm a hyper extrovert, so one of the cons to that is you do have an off switch eventually. I could be having a good time socially, let's say we're at some type of social, and there's a certain point where I need to leave. I'm having a great time, but I need to go and sleep. I have a hard time working in a room with people that I know, and the reason for that is I'm far too attuned to my surroundings. But if you were to put me in the middle of a food court in a mall where I'm around people, which is what I want, I don't know any of them, so I'm not attuned. I can insert job here very, very well.
Oh, I see your point. All right, fair enough. What advice would you give to aspiring indie comic book creators out there?
Well, I'm pretty green to this. The only thing I would give is, or the only thing I could really say is, if you're collaborating with anybody, it doesn't hurt to ask. And from all of the indie comics that I've read in the last pinch of years, they're all different. If yours feels stupid, that's probably a good thing. It's something different. And there's all sorts of different niches and stuff. Just doesn't hurt to just try something.
There you go. Well said. Well said. What's the most creative, if you will, excuse to get out of doing something you didn't want to do?
To clarify, what's the most creative thing I've ever done to get out of doing something?
Well, it's specifically asking what's the most creative. I'm sorry. Let me start that over. What's the most creative excuse to get out of doing something you didn't want to do?
The most creative
excuse, yeah.
That's a tough one. I don't know.
Okay, I mean, it's fine. It's fine. Yeah, if you
I
have an
don't
answer,
think I
it's
can
fine.
answer that one. It's a good question. I just don't think I personally have an answer for it.
It's okay. It's okay. You can plead the fifth. It's fine. No, I'm kidding. But yeah, we're pleading the fifth, Your Honor. Let him go. Anyway, here's one for you. What are most people afraid of that doesn't scare you one bit?
Social conflict.
Mm.
And I have to be very clear on this one because that's a very broad statement that can make me look like a WWE heel. Social conflict. There's a big. I've heard this term in many other places. I can't use it. I've had this mindset beforehand, but since I've heard this term, I just use the term because it's easier to describe. It's very easy, it's harder to confront something. They call it honest conflict. It's very easy to just put your head in the sand, hope the problem blows over, and it never really does. The phrase I've heard, I don't know where it started, is like honest conflict over dishonest harmony. Basically, if you confront the problem right away, you don't have to worry about it later. But if you don't confront about it, it's always at the back of your mind. And I've had a lot of, I shouldn't say a lot of individuals. I've had a couple of coworkers, a couple of friends, even my parents growing up and having kids and we talked about boundaries. Okay, well, let's have an uncomfortable conversation. Let's get this out of the way and then it's done. It's out of the way and that's that.
I see your point. All right. Appreciate you sharing that with us. And I also want to take this opportunity to say thank you to, apparently, we should give this young man a new title. Comic book movie and comic book historian of certain eras, Ray Jamison, with a PhD. Yeah, that's right. He's that smart. Are you smarter than a fifth grader? Yes, he is. He's smarter than the average bear.
I don't know. Those fifth graders are pretty smart, man.
No, it's true. It's true. But I'm trying to give you some credit here. But you're kind of like, never mind. You're good. You get the gold.
I'll just say thank you. How about that?
There you go. That's what I was trying to get at. And you get a gold star. So my point is, we want to take this opportunity to say thank you to the one and only Ray Jamison of Canada. I didn't even know he was in Canada. For being with us.
I don't have an accent. That's good.
Yeah.
I'll say stuff like 5 minutes for high sticking, maple syrup, Molson, Canadian. That's a beer, right? I don't drink beer. And I don't like hockey. I don't know. Those are big cliches that don't apply to me. I cut you off, though. Go ahead.
No, it's fine. You mentioned a few things, and it just brought up the expression, or not the expression. What is it known as? The movie quote from our friendly neighborhood class is Pain 101. Your instructor is Casey Jones. Let's not forget my personal favorite, 2 minutes for high stick. Anyway. Yeah. Sorry, I grew up on TMNT in the 90s. I love those movies. I don't care what anyone says. The first two are great. Third one, you can take it or leave it. But the first one, in my opinion, was I've heard this before by the Angry Video Game Nerd. Really?
1990, when that movie dropped, that was the moment the 90s started. And I agree with that.
I didn't even think of that, but that's a valid point.
I love that.
That's a valid point.
The 90s started with that movie.
That's a valid point. And not only that, next year it'll be its 35th anniversary, and we're going to be doing an epic. And I do mean epic, and not even epic. It's going to be bossa nova. A Chevy Nova? No. Excellent. It's going to be far out. It's going to be awesome. And it's going to be next year in 2025. Don't worry. Once we get all the dates figured out for 2025, which is a long way off, because believe me when I tell you, the season of movie watch along that we have planned for the person who may be watching or listening to this, oh my gosh, it's insane how many movies are turned a certain age this year. And we are very excited to continue celebrating these great movies, which we'll talk more about here in a bit. But once again, thank you to Ray Jamison for being with us. We greatly appreciate it. We're going to have Ray Jamison on a few of our other shows so we can talk more about some of these comic book-based properties, some of these characters. Yeah, seriously, like some of these characters, fandoms, all these other kinds of things. We're going to have to bring him back at some point. Not sure when, not sure where, but we're going to figure it out somewhere down the line. We'll be in touch through other channels and all that good stuff. But Ray, thank you so much for being here. If a person is watching or listening to this, they want to find out more about you and the incredible things that you're doing or some of the things you're in the process of putting together, where can they follow you on social media?
On social media, you can find me as DM Ray on Facebook. On Instagram, you can find me as Raymond, the DM. DM Ray was taken. And you can find my Madcaps page on Facebook. After this issue that I currently have on Kickstarter, look up the Madcaps issue number 1. When that's finished, I'm going to add one more platform for social media. I think I'm going to do it one at a time like that instead of overextending myself. This is a first time and it's a rabbit hole. When these 3 comics are done, I don't know what my plan will be. I just wanted to make this project. I'm a real fan of fantasy, RPG, and comic books. I think this is a comic that you can definitely appreciate for being unique. Comic books you always think about like superheroes, but in reality, you can. We should be giving capes, and not just capes attention, but cloaks too. So definitely check out the Madcaps if you want something different. All 4 characters, as you've already seen, they're visually very different, but their personalities are different. And really the only thing they all have in common with each other is they're all non-human, and they're in a human and orc city. So they've kind of been, over their childhood, corralled into a group, and their views on their surroundings, their upbringings, they all have different takes and conflicting opinions, and it's a really cool ride. There's great balance of action, dialogue, intrigued. Essentially, if you know the term a whodunit, that is basically all 3 issues in a nutshell. And if you back it now, we just hit our 50th backer. By the time we get to issue 3, I promise you the payoff, just like all of these movies we were talking about, the 3rd act is definitely worth it. The payoff is great. You will definitely enjoy it. With that said, Madcaps on Kickstarter right now until the end of the month. It's literally 6 days to go. And I think that covers all of it. There's some really cool add-ons, but that is all I have to say. Please check out the page. If anything, even if you don't back it, look at all the cool add-ons. There's some really cool stuff going on there.
Well, there you go. Thank you very much, kind sir, for being with us. I'm going to talk to you here in just a moment. My name is Ryan of Anti-Quote Channel. Follow me on Twitter and Instagram at RyanRPM5. Links to where you can follow Ray Jamison and myself are located in the description below, so make sure you check out those links. Support his Kickstarter. Look at all the incredible things that he's got coming up. My goodness, this man knows a thing or two because he's written and he has also seen a thing or two. Yeah, he is a expert among experts. He is an expert. Bum, ba-dum, bum, 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 bum. Anyway, that was my poor attempt at a jingle, but it didn't work. But once again, check us out on all forms of social media. Great things coming your way. Goodness gracious. Talk about Bossa Nova on that one, folks. Our next goal is reaching 5,000 subscribers. We can do that with your help. We're already over 1,000, which is fantastic. And we thank you so much for being with us and supporting us in that part of our journey. But if you could help us get to 5K, 5,000, we're going to throw a great big live stream celebration. We're going to have returning favorites. We're going to have surprise guests. And we're going to do some special giveaways that you, our incredible fans / subscribers, are going to be eligible to win. We also got a support the show with a buy me a coffee link, or in our case, well, we like pizza, so why not? If the turtles can have pizza every day of their lives, so can I. Also, we got merch, we got shirts, we got hoodies, we got stickers, we got tumblers, we got stationery, we got coffee mugs, all that kind of good stuff. So make sure you check that stuff out. Absolutely. Our next convention on the, and I quote, Comic-Con tour is going to be tomorrow on May the 25th in Oaks, Pennsylvania for Thy Geekdom Con. We're going to have a lot of fun. We're going to be walking around and saying hello to a bunch of people. Some familiar faces are going to be there as well. Look forward to seeing them. And then the next stop on the tour after that is going to be Shore Leave 44, which is July 26th through the 28th, located in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. Make sure you visit shore-leave.com for more details. Now, speaking of, we talked about fantasy, RPG, and all that stuff, but if you really like this other genre known as sci-fi, Saving the Galaxy one glitchy robot at a time, check out the Robot Galaxy series, book series for all ages, written by our good friend Adina Mignona of the Big Sci-Fi Podcast. You can find those books on Amazon or Kobo, Barnes & Noble, or you can buy directly from the author at adinamignona.com. Also, if you're looking for some hard sci-fi meets AI intrigue. Oh, yeah. Check out Lunar Logic. Once again, that's written by our good friend Adina Mignona. You can find that on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, or you can buy directly from the author and support her and support indie authors as well. AdinaMignona.com. Make sure you visit that. Check out the Big Sci-Fi Podcast. Wherever you find your podcast, they talk about some great stuff over there. Incredible things. So once again, like, comment, share, subscribe, ring that bell to be notified of when our videos go up or they go live. And yes, we got more plans for more movie watch-alongs. The next one is going to be on Sunday, the 26th. We're going to be celebrating Ghostbusters' 40th anniversary. Yeah, Ghostbusters turns 40, Ray, and the person maybe watching or listening to this. Isn't that insane? You know why? Because that's a big Twinkie. But thank you so much for being with us. And remember, life is better when supporting indie creators of all shapes and sizes and supporting small businesses. Take a look.
Famous Faces and Funnies in Melbourne, Florida is leading the way in pop culture fun. From comic books and graphic novels to Funko Pops and collector's items, Famous Faces and Funnies has it all. Rick Shea and the professional team at Famous Faces and Funnies are friendly and knowledgeable. Whether you're looking for toys, props, collector treasures, or a new comic book, Famous Faces and Funnies is your one-stop shop. To find Famous Faces and Funnies on Facebook and Twitter, just type at FFF Comics. Author Cindy Kep is writing on the edge. Books include Remnant in the Stars, The Loudest Actions, Lines of Succession, Mindstorm, Condemned Courier, the Yerushalayim series, and Animal Eye. Find author Cindy Kep at CKOEPP.com today.
Good morning. Oh, and in case I don't see you, good afternoon, good evening, and good night.